Welcome to the Grip Strip Podcast, episode 77. Kyle Larson did the same thing that Carl Edwards did years ago, but because he's the chosen one, they make it seem like that was a cool move. Uh, and Max Verstappen won the Dutch Grand Prix, which I think everybody and their mother predicted. Edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. Also, NFL Week One is upon uh, is right around the corner, and we'll talk about that, preview that fantasy wise, also for our teams, our actual teams. Get into all the racing that took place this past weekend. Preview the Italian Grand Prix. Preview the Grand Prix of Portland for Indy cars as they return for their West Coast swing to finish out the season. Richmond will be a doubleheader on Saturday on September 11th. Uh, 20 years since the attacks, so uh, it's a solemn occasion. Of course, we've had a lot of tough times here in recent weeks, of course, with not only COVID and the weather events, but this is yet another example of reminding us of how fragile life is. And talk about all that. We'll get into a lot of the news that's been going on, and we'll go we'll go from there. We'll see what's going, and we'll talk about Josh and his sim segment. We'll talk about whatever else is on my mind, if there is anything, because I'm probably not going to be functional. But we will see about how functional I really am. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host Josh Fine. What's good, brother?
I'm doing great, Phil. We had a good racing this weekend at Darlington. Dutch was, whatever, but at least the race actually happened, unlike the previous week at Spa. So we have that
Yeah,
to look at. NFL Week One upon us. Finally, we have Jacksonville at Houston. That's a big matchup for me, and of course, you got your 49ers as well. Their first
against
game,
Detroit.
yeah, against Detroit. So it should be an interesting one to watch there. But in between all of that, we got a lot of racing to talk about as well. So I'm glad to be up on the show once again this week.
Yeah, and we got a lot to get going too, so we'll start. We will get into this week's GSP to start with Max Verstappen retaking the uh, points lead in Formula One with a dominant Dutch Grand Prix victory. He qualified on pole by a very 38 thousandths of a second on Saturday, so sent all the orange group home happy. Then on Sunday, got a great start. It got close for a little bit, but really it wasn't that close. Lewis was having a hard time with his tires. They tried to do undercuts. They tried to do their strategy. The Mercedes strategy was an abomination the whole entire day. It led to the point of where Valtteri Bottas uh, took the fastest lap in the process of their stupid strategy. And then Hamilton had to pit to go and retake the fastest lap. Uh, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Mercedes just didn't have race pace. Uh,
Yeah.
the Red Bull was the best car. That circuit was ideally suited to that. We talked about it on the Grid Talk podcast as well in the review of the race a few days ago. And I, we have to see what's going to happen when it comes to Monza this week. But Max Verstappen gets a win at home, the first Dutch Grand Prix since I was a wee young laddie. I was only a few months old the last time they raced the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. And so, first Dutch driver, of course, to win in Formula One, all these things. Uh, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Pierre Gasly, and Charles Leclerc. They all started and finished they finished where they started. Fernando Alonso finished sixth after starting ninth. Carlos Sainz finished seventh after starting sixth. Sergio Perez had a nightmare weekend up until the race. He was literally the only person who overtook anybody outside of Fernando Alonso. And Esteban Ocon, Lando Norris salvages 1 point for McLaren in a brutal weekend for McLaren. They've been the third best team for good amount of the year. I'm having a hard time getting out words today. But last weekend at Zandvoort was not one of their best races. Ferrari gets a double point score and passes them in the Constructors' Championship. And then there was other stuff that went on with some of the other guys, which we'll get into in regards to later discussing other drivers. But really, Max Verstappen, he's been the best driver this year. They have the best car. It's his 7th win of the season. It's his, I'm trying to check over here. That's 2021 stats. I'm just looking for, yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, he has 17. This is now his 17th win. So he's already more than doubled the most wins he's ever had in his career. He's one podium away from tying the most podiums he's had in a season. He's like doubled the amount of poles he's had total in his whole entire career. So it's a career year. This is a time for Max Verstappen, and for all the people, the orange blob that were aggrieved at the British Grand Prix and felt he was unjustly taken out, and Valtteri Bottas and Hungary and all that. Things have kind of been brought back to normal. I guess they want him to be back up by like 32 points, but Max Verstappen, if he does that about 2 or 3 more times, I think this championship is probably going to be over. Because I don't know how many more races there's going to be, Josh. The way things are going here, it's going to be hard if he is at that level, the way he was last weekend. I have a hard time believing even Lewis Hamilton can beat him, and Lewis is one of the greatest ever. But what are your thoughts on this past weekend at Zandvoort, the track, and some of the things? It's an interesting, cool circuit. It's not meant for Formula One cars. Assen is more suited to probably have Formula One cars. And at the rate they're going, if they get that many people to show up to Zandvoort, they might just have 2 Dutch Grand Prix at the rate we're going. That might be an idea, but that's what I was saying on Good Talk. But what did you think about the races this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it was a processional race, really, as far as the actual racing. Max Verstappen pretty much led the whole thing. Between pit stops, Valtteri Bottas took the lead, but other than that, it was all Max Verstappen. They had all the pace, really. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, they didn't really have the same level of pace that Max had, so they obviously had to use a little bit different pit strategy, but that didn't work out, and Lewis was never really able to keep up with Max throughout that entire race, and so just lost the points lead now for the championship. Now he's 3 points behind Verstappen, but still got a lot of racing left. But like you said, if Verstappen goes on a tear here and wins 2 or 3 in a row, it's going to put a lot of distance between himself and Lewis Hamilton. So still a lot of things to play, but the way the pace of the Red Bull looks like Max Verstappen is going to have a lot of good momentum here coming up, especially with Italian Grand Prix. This track is upcoming track at Monza. A lot of speed, a lot of low downforce, so that might play into the Red Bull's hands. So we'll talk about that later. But as far as the points championship, it's beginning to swing back in Verstappen's favor. But there wasn't really much racing, like I said earlier. Just you saw in the start, Fernando Alonso made some moves on the high line in turn 3, and kind of made 3 wide move. He's got a little bit of that oval racing experience kind of playing into hand there. He's kind of maybe one of the first drivers to kind of figure that out, using the high line, getting all that momentum on there. Sergio Perez made some moves throughout the race. He passed Ricardo and then passed Lando Norris later. They made contact, of course, coming out of that first corner. So that was a pretty interesting sequence of events there. But it was nothing really much. The only drivers that finished on the lead lap were Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, and then Valtteri Bottas. So other than that, it wasn't really that competitive when you come to think about it. But I think for the rest of the field, you had Pierre Gasly finishing in 4th, which is a solid finish for that team, which they need that type of finish. And and it helps continue to raise Gasly's profile, even though he's likely probably not going to leave the AlphaTauri team this year. And Leclerc finished fifth. Fernando Alonso, of course, like we mentioned, finished sixth place. So a lot of the midfield guys had really good days. I think McLaren didn't really have their best day. Normally they've finished a little higher, especially with Lando Norris. They're closer to the podium most races. In this one, Lando was the only one to score points, and he only scored 1 point, finishing in 10th. So a bit of a disappointing race for McLaren. And of course, Lando loses a spot in the championship, losing third place to Valtteri Bottas. So a bit of a change in the drivers' championship standings as well. And talking about turn three is like a new corner. They've reconfigured it to have more banking. They wanted to have side by side racing, and it turns out really that wasn't really much of that, and the cars ended up using most of the high line anyways for the most part. So it was, if you kind of picture the track, it looked like Bristol and NASCAR with the way that the corner was configured, because you have very low banking at the bottom of the corner, around like 4 degrees of banking, and then all the way up on the top of the corner you have 19 degrees of banking. So very similar to Bristol Motor Speedway in NASCAR. So and over here we have the low line, of course, with PJ1, but on the high line still has a lot of grip with more banking. So kind of similar to that. And the drivers ended up just using the high line because, of course, more grip, more downforce, and carry a lot more speed through that. And low line, you have to really slow down the car to be able to make that corner using the low line and coming off the corner, especially if you're trying to pass. You just don't have as much momentum being able to pass the car on the inside. Even if you get to the inside of the car, you still have to be able to finish the corner exit and carry that speed on that little bit of straightaway there after that corner. So if you're able to do that, you have to have a really good car. You just have to have a lot of speed going through that corner or coming off corner exit. So that was I guess for that corner, I mean, I think they had a good idea. Maybe it works in other cars, but maybe not so much in Formula One there. So interesting concept though with that corner, and of course the last turn at Zandvoort is also very banked as well. So interesting concepts, but maybe it doesn't work in Formula One. But for the most part, just a very processional Grand Prix. But that's how it is sometimes in Formula One racing. Just have to accept it and move on to the next race.
Yeah, and there's a chance even at Monza it'll be a procession, but the fact is you have opportunities to overtake with the super low downforce uh, packages that they'll bring. You add that to the fact that they weren't able to race at the Spa a few weeks ago, and there are probably some upgrades that some of these teams didn't even get to use. I agree with you, Josh, on the way that the track is laid out. Tarzan Turn One kind of has the same feel of the old days. The turn three is really cool and they have good camera angles, but I'm sure in an F3 car, that's a much better corner, or in a, like some sort of touring car, a smaller stock type class touring car. Um, the last two corners, I think the last corner is named after Harry Lunatic. Um,
Harry Lyondike.
yeah, Harry Lunatic. So they, and it makes sense that they call that corner Lion Dyke because he made his name at Indianapolis and all. So uh, they'll probably be naming one of these corners after Max here soon enough. Probably in the next few months when he wins a world championship, probably. Uh, but either way, it's a nice circuit. It's great to go to classic circuits. It's better than going to Saudi Arabia or going to all these places where they're dictatorships like Russia and all these horrible, shitty countries, or places where they basically deny that, they just do horrible things. Like they're going to go to Miami. They're the two Formula One races they have right now in America, are in the two of the in Florida where you have Dumb Santis, and Texas where you have Abbott. So I
Oh,
mean,
come on, man. It's my
it's
state.
I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, you live there, but you can't help the fact that there's so many fucked up people there. But Either way, we'll move on from that and we'll get into the fact that Pierre Gasly had another great weekend. You mentioned him earlier, Josh, and he's somebody who I was saying we've said it on here, and I've said it on multiple places where I thought he should have been signed by Alpine. They put their eggs with in the basket of Esteban Ocon. He's paid that off with him winning at the Hungarian Grand Prix. I think Gasly might be better than him. Maybe Gasly's in play after for 2023. Maybe Guan Yu Zhou, or who knows what they're going to do, because Alpine and Renault, they only have one team right now. They're not supplying another team for whatever reason. Um, doesn't seem like they're going to be supplying either Sauber or Williams next year. I think if Williams decided to go with Renault power, it might be a little more palatable for Toto Wolff for the next part that we're going to talk about. But it sounds like the current Alpha Sauber team might be moving to a Mercedes power unit, from what rumors are saying. But in whatever, with all of that, Gasly has been one of the best drivers this year, outside of Max and probably Lando until the last few weeks. I think Gasly's been a top five driver this year, and he has basically carried the AlphaTauri outfit on his back, having to battle both Ferraris, having to battle both McLarens, having to battle the second drivers for both Mercedes and Red Bull, at times even the Alpines and Aston Martins. He's taken a real step forward this year. I mean, I think it all. I mean, all the crap that happened to him at Red Bull and him getting run out the door too early. It really started with him going and getting that podium in Brazil a couple of years ago, and then this is a 1 year anniversary of him going and winning the Italian Grand Prix for his first career Grand Prix victory, which was probably the most enjoyed race of the year last year. Um, Credit to him, but they're making progress. And is this a sign that this AlphaTauri team is going to take a step? Can they make that step forward? Can they get in with the big dogs, the team that was once minority? Can they actually be in with these big time factory names, the names that have been around forever, like Ferrari and McLaren in the midfield battle, and even maybe, perish a thought, go up there with the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes with the new regulations coming along in 2022.
I mean, you talk about Gasly's team with AlphaTauri. I mean, they were originally the Red Bull Junior team in Formula One, for many years, with their Toro Rosso, and the last couple of years they've kind of rebranded themselves. And I think as they move along into the future, maybe they might become more independent. Or I mean, they already are independent, but maybe they'll be more than just their de facto Red Bull Junior team. And I think even with Gasly, who's I think eventually he's going to move on to another team, but for now he's showing what their cars are capable of, and certainly he's been one of the better drivers of the season, like you said. And definitely they at some of these tracks like Zandvoort, they've definitely had the pace at least to finish very high. I mean, they didn't finish on the lead lap, but they still were the best of the cars to not finish on the lead lap. So I think something to at least be a little bit proud of for them. So I think they've had that stigma of being the junior team, and every now and then they have a really good driver, like when they had Max Verstappen very briefly. He was really good in those cars, and then they moved him up
Vettel.
to Red Bull, and Vettel too. Yeah, I mean, so but that was again more when they were Red Bull's program, and of course you have Yuki Tsunoda as well, who's a Red Bull driver. So there's still a little bit of that factor, but if they can be competitive on the level almost to Red Bull, or right now maybe as competitive as what McLaren is, I think that's a huge improvement for that team. Over their history, they had drivers in the past who elevated, like Verstappen, Vettel, all those guys. I mean, even Ricardo, but they've never really like been anything more than the junior team for Red Bull. So I think over the years they'll continue to improve, and I think they'll be a very very much independent team. I mean, they already are. So I think that will be a good storyline to have another competitive team in Formula One. So definitely something to look out for as we go throughout the season, and then go into next season, of course, with the new regulations.
Yeah, and that's something when you go and look at the point standings right now. When you look at it, it's for bringing in Gasly. He is eighth in points right now. He's ahead of Daniel Ricciardo by 10, Fernando Alonso by 20, and 22 points over Esteban Ocon, who of course won uh, the the Hungarian Grand Prix. So you have that going for you in regards to the uh, in constructors. The AlphaTauri team is fifth. I think I'm just trying to wait on this right here. Yeah, they're 6 points behind Alpine. They're for fifth, uh, and which and they have a 31 point lead on Aston Martin, so they're basically locked into that. So that's a real big progression for them. And if Yuki Tsunoda can kind of put things together here in the next last few races, they could possibly get past Alpine for fifth, which would be something. Uh, Getting back to just to go over the points going into Italy, which we'll preview in a little bit. Max Verstappen at 224.5 points is up by 3 points on Lewis Hamilton. They're nearly 100. He's over 100. Max Verstappen's over 100 points ahead of Valtteri Bottas, 101.5 points ahead of Valtteri Bottas, who's in third. Uh, Bottas, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez are separated by 15. Lando Norris, 9. That's for the battle for third in the World Drivers' Championship. Leclerc and Sainz are separated by 2.5 points. I mentioned Gasly, Ricardo, Alonso, the top 10. And then in the team's championship, Mercedes, as of now, still leads that by 12 points over Red Bull. Ferrari retook third in the Constructors' Championship after Zandvoort. They have a 12-point lead on McLaren going home to Monza. Alpine is at 90.6 points out of AlphaTauri. So there is that. Uh, Going into the Italian Grand Prix, um, when it comes to uh, their silly season, that was a busy week. This last few days, not even a week, last few days has been very busy. Uh, the first Kimi Räikkönen test positive for COVID. He missed the Dutch Grand Prix. He's going to miss the Italian Grand Prix. Robert Kubica is going to be driving this weekend. He drove last weekend. He didn't do a bad job. But as it stands, Valtteri Bottas will be moving to the Alfa Romeo team full time next year in a multi year deal to go to the Swiss, what was once the Sauber team. Alexander Albon will be coming back after a year in DTM to race for Williams, and he'll partner Latifi. And we don't know who the teammate is going to be for Valtteri Bottas because, of course, Raikkonen's retiring. There's no guarantees it's going to be Giovinazzi. There might be Nick DeVries. There's a few people in play there for that second seat. We don't know who their power unit supplier is going to be. I think Mercedes, it sounds like Mercedes is going to be supplying Williams. So it's going to be kind of weird with the whole Red Bull thing because Christian Horner's a dick and he has 4 cars, but he can't find a ride for Alex Albon. But then he wants Mercedes to do him favors when he whines and bitches and moans about Mercedes because he's a cuck. And then that also opens the door for Georgie Boy. George Russell is going to be Lewis Hamilton's teammate at Mercedes starting in 2022. It's something that a lot of us fans of George Russell have been hoping for after the Secure Grand Prix, which he basically won, should have won last year, filling in for Lewis Hamilton. I think that was one of the many steps that was in the process to where Toto Wolff couldn't deny it anymore. You need to start looking at the future. Lewis Hamilton is 36, going on 37. I know that because he's literally a 3 weeks older than me. Um, but he's got way more money and has had way more women and a lot more championships and wins and all kinds of other stuff. But I'm not jealous. But the fact of the matter is now he has a teammate that is really going to push him. And at the same time, I think he's going to make the team better with his energy and his positivity and his focus. And I think this whole last few days of silly season, literally, there's only one seat left on the grid that is open to be determined for the rest of the season. Everything else has basically been announced. AlphaTauri re-signed both their drivers. You know, whatever Alpine had already committed for their drivers for next year. Ferrari has multi-year deals on both their guys. Red Bull signed back Perez, and we know they're never getting rid of Max Verstappen. Um, McLaren has a multi-year deal with Lando, and they have a multi-year deal with Daniel Ricciardo. So, I mean, thoughts on Josh on all these moves? I mean, George going to Mercedes is the big one, but I mean, to a lesser extent, Valtteri Bottas now kind of deciding to move down the grid, maybe build something at Sauber, Alpha Sauber, and leave somewhat of a legacy in Formula One. While he's not going to be a contender anymore, and then Alexander Albon getting a return to Formula One, albeit in a Mercedes customer team, and all the super best friends, the bosom buddies, Russell, Albon, and Lando Norris will be back together on the Formula One grid next year, and
Yes.
Leclerc too.
Right, right. It's an interesting series of moves. I mean, we knew that Russell was. I mean, it still hasn't been officially announced. George Russell going to Mercedes, but I mean, it's ultimately the inevitable move that for Valtteri Bottas is going to move on from Mercedes, and we finally see him go to Alfa Romeo, which I mean, obviously not a contending team, but we'll see if he can get better results than Antonio Giovinazzi is right now, and better results than driver he'll be replacing in Kimi Raikkonen. Of course, Raikkonen on the very back end of his career, about to retire, and now Valtteri Bottas going to take over, and we'll see if he's able to push the car as far as he can. Potentially, maybe he can be a contender for the midfield, maybe the lower end of the midfield, where maybe he scores 1 point or two here or there. We'll have to see how that goes, but I saw one person on Twitter saying we're gonna see what kind of driver Valtteri Bottas really is after leaving Mercedes. So that should be interesting. I mean, he's basically been replacing world championship drivers. He replaced Nicky, or not Nicky Lauda, but why am I'm forgetting who he replaced
Nico
at Mercedes?
Rosberg.
Yeah, Nico Rosberg. Yeah, he replaced Nico Rosberg at Mercedes, world champion. Now he's replacing Kimi Raikkonen, world champion driver. Be it his championship was a very long time ago. So continuing, that's basically his story, is replacing world championship drivers in Formula One. Then also we have Alex Albon going to Williams and replacing George Russell. So a lot of this is basically a domino effect of moves, and Alex Albon is still got an option with Red Bull, but for now he's driving for Williams and ultimately Mercedes. So maybe this is a long game. I mean, even if Toto Wolff try to push it, if he tries to push for Alex Albon to replace Lewis Hamilton in a few years, maybe that's the ultimate strategy there, and steal him from Red Bull. Of course, still have that option. So that's going to be an interesting storyline, I think. If Albon's able to produce results and he's able to show he's good enough, and then if Lewis decides to hang it up in a few years or a year or two, whenever, then maybe they go and replace him without Alex Albon. So that would be quite a move for him to be able to replace Lewis if that does happen. But maybe that's ultimately the end game for Williams. But for now, he'll be kind of in the back. But maybe every now and then he'll be able to surprise people with the type of races he might be able to have in that car, sort of like George Russell. So should be a very good field next year, but of course, still a lot of racing left this year. So we'll have to see what happens if there are any other moves that might happen. Apparently, there was a rumor that Vettel would get kicked for Alonso over at Austin Martin, which that's a very interesting move. But of course, that seems to be a rumor that was proven to be not true, but nonetheless, still very interesting rumor. So could hear lots of other crazy rumors here for the rest of Formula One silly season.
Yeah, I mean, for George, there's it's going to be interesting having to move into the big team and having to compete with somebody he's looked up to, who is one of the greatest drivers of all time. For Albon, I mean, I don't know what the end game really is. I mean, maybe it is he'll go to Mercedes, maybe he'll get back to the regular Red Bull team. If he does well enough, they'll say that he's capable of being back in a Red Bull and they'll let Sergio Perez go. Uh, Maybe Yuki Tsunoda doesn't because Honda's not going to be involved after next year, more or less. They don't really need to have a Japanese driver at that point. I don't know. That might be a play too. In regards to Bottas, who knows what he's going to do? He There's one of two ways it could really go for him. He could go and be reborn in a sense because he can relax and kind of drive with a little more freedom. Maybe some of the mistakes and errors that he's made over the last few years driving with Mercedes might go away. Maybe he feels like now that there really nobody's focusing on him, he can go and uh, become the driver that he was at times at Williams when he was qualifying up front and contending for poles and contending for wins. Maybe that's what he does. Sauber at one point was a pretty good team, and they were a factory outfit with Robert Kubica, with BMW. They with Sergio Perez, they contended. They had Kamui Kobayashi. All these different drivers. There's been lots of drivers that have been at Sauber over the years, so that have been good drivers in this sport. So maybe that's what happens. I don't have any ill will towards Valtteri Bottas. There were times where you just wondered what he was doing and jokes about him and porridge and all this other stuff. But it's a new start for him. He gets to start fresh. Him and Lewis have a great working relationship. It's netted all these constructors championships. He battled Lewis one year for the world championship, but otherwise he hasn't been the guy. People who wanted him to basically be like Nico Rosberg 2.0, it wasn't going to happen because Valtteri Bottas isn't an asshole, and he isn't a self-centered windbag. I mean, granted, it's the same way as like Alex Rodriguez, who's selfish and self-serving. Everyone's like, oh, he's a great announcer. Yeah, he's a really good announcer because he actually has knowledge and but that's fine. But the point is, you can't get around the fact that he's a d-bag. It's the same way with Nico Rosberg. It kind of brings up the fact that David Croft and Jenson Button had a great interplay this past weekend on the broadcast together. Not trying to replace Martin Brundle by any means because he does such a great job and he's doing it for so long. But I think for the future, Jenson Button is he's pretty good at this announcing game. It's similar to Dario, I guess. Dario's really good at it too. Wish he was calling him racing in America instead of calling Formula E. Would be a better upgrade than having that fat orange piece of shit in the IndyCar booth with Townsend Bell and Lee Diffie. But we can only wish, I guess. That's why Alan Bestwick is calling tennis and not racing, except for 6 weeks in the summer. We'll move to the NASCAR Darlington Southern 500, one of the classics. It's a race that everyone wants to win. And old Dennis Hamlin joins an illustrious list of, I think it's Jeff Gordon, Cale Yarborough, and Bobby Allison as drivers to win the Daytona 500 and the Southern 500 3 times each. Denny Hamlin hadn't won a race all year, and now he wins the Southern 500 and puts himself right smack dab into it wasn't like he was out of the conversation by any means, but he really now after winning this past weekend is a factor for this points championship. Locks himself in. It was literally the two guys that have basically been up there all year. They dominated the race. They led virtually the entire race. What is it? 2, 0, 3, yeah, over 300 laps of the race were led by Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. They finished first and second. Kyle Larson knocked the wall down, tried to do some Mario Kart bullshit to try to pass Denny Hamlin, but in the end, that didn't really work. But it is what it is in that sense. As it stands right now, I don't know why the points aren't updated. So now Denny Hamlin's locked in to the round of 12, but he's still behind Kyle Larson points wise by what is it? 28 and 30. Yeah, 34 points. So 34 points overall. Martin Truex is third, Kurt Busch fourth, Ryan Blaney fifth, Joey Logano sixth. The cutoff right now sees Alex Bowman and Tyler Reddick tied. Kyle Busch, who had a nightmare race and then got fined $50,000 for driving through the garage like he didn't see anybody else around there, and did a great. I was rooting for him to have the great post rec interview that he did, and I was proud of him on that one. He did a good job. People think I'm being honest. I knew it was coming, and I'm like, I want him to deliver, and he delivered. And he was not happy. I figured he was gonna be pissed at Austin Dillon. Wasn't pissed at Austin Dillon. He kind of has that, like Tony Stewart, the like 2011 feel going. So maybe he goes out and pulls it out of his ass. So I don't think so. Something changed after he won that championship a couple of years ago. Something switched with Kyle Busch, and it's something we probably would have to analyze later once we get into the postseason. But Larson, Hamlin dominated. Ross Chastain finished third, and I was hoping that Larson would have ran over Hamlin, wrecked both of them, and then Ross Chastain would have won his first career Cup race at the Southern 500. He was the first non-playoff driver. He was the only non-playoff driver that was really a factor during the night. Other than that, everybody else that was up there is a playoff guy. What is it? 7 out of the top 8 were playoff guys. Hamlin, Larson, Chastain, Truex, Harvick, Kurt Busch, Keselowski, Logano. Chris Buescher started 34th and finished 9th, so that's a huge run for them. Dillon missed the playoff, but finished 10th. Ryan Preece, who doesn't have a ride next year, finished 12th. I mean, no neck, finished top 15. Corey LaJoie actually got a stage point and finished in the top 15 for being the imbecile that he is. Blaney had a better car than what he ended up finishing with there. Christopher Bell's up there earlier in the day. Elliott crashed out of a decent position. And that was basically it. I mean, Denny Hamlin wins at Darlington again. It's kind of old hat for him.
Yeah, it's old hat for Denny Hamlin, and this was the race to pick for him to win probably. But it was definitely a challenging one for sure. And they were on a little bit of different strategy towards the middle of the race between him and Truex, and then you had Larson and the rest of the field on a different strategy. And it ended up being where they ended up having to take one less pit stop than the other guys, which probably would have worked out for them anyways if the race had stayed green for the rest of it. But even so, he was able to stay in the lead. And in fact, I mean, Martin Truex beat him off pit road on the last pit stop, but then Truex had that pit road penalty, and then that left Denny Hamlin in the lead, and then he just had to stay in front of Kyle Larson for the rest of the race. And Larson probably had some chances to get up there. There's a couple times where he got within a car length of Denny Hamlin, but for the most part, wasn't able to do that. And then, of course, at the end, tried basically not lifting into turn three to try to get to him, and only would have worked on the high line if Denny Hamlin would have taken the lower line on corner exit and then maybe got to the side of him. But of course, runs in the back of him and then hits the wall. But that's how those type of moves go. And had to be able to try it. So that was the only move really he could make there. And similar to Carl Edwards in 2008 and everything, which that was a pretty entertaining move there too. So which I remember watching that as a teenager and thinking it was like, what the heck? And then Jamie Johnson ended up winning that one, but this one Denny Hamlin wins. So still championship list for Denny Hamlin, but third Southern 500 to go with 3 Daytona 500 is pretty good for a guy like Denny Hamlin. And then of course Ross Chastain, like I agree with you there. He had the best car, I think, at the end, but just wasn't able to have the track position really to do anything because he had a chance to pass Larson but couldn't get it done. And I think if he passed Larson, he might have been able to get around Denny Hamlin. But of course, it's really tough to pass at Darlington, and didn't have enough there to get by both of them. But still, a pretty good run for Chastain. And then one other thing on Larson, I mean, he could have maybe dived down to the low end of the track, like way low on the apron and not lifted, and maybe he would have gotten to Denny Hamlin. But that probably would have taken both of them out if he had gone on the low end. So keeping the speed up on the high end, probably a better decision there. But of course, for the rest of the field, a lot of carnage for them. Started out with Michael McDowell crashed out early and finished last. Kyle Busch crashed out of the race, and saw the incident there with him going to the garage, and of course fined $50K for it, but no other penalties. So that's an interesting one for NASCAR. And then William Byron and Alex Bowman, both of them didn't really have good nights either. They both got into it early on. Alex Bowman had that tire issue, got into the wall, and then his teammate got in the back of him, and that was basically their race. And then William Byron did kind of recover from it, but then ended up having a flat tire and pancake the right side of the wall, which ended his night. So that wasn't good for him. And then Chase Elliott, he got into the wall also, and that was a result of Bubba Wallace and Christopher Bell going turn three, turn 3 and 4. They were 3 wide, and they got into each other. And then I think Bell got into Chase Elliott there, so that basically caused a flat tire for Chase, and then he hit the wall, and that ended his night. And Ryan Blaney had a good run and led early on, but then his brakes faded, and then lost the brakes on his car, so didn't finish in the top 10, and then ended up finishing 22nd. So not a great night for him. Almirola covered because he had a bad night early on, but then was still able to recover and finish 16th, first car lap down. So at least for some of these drivers, they definitely had a bad night, but Chase Elliott still has a little bit of a points gap to the cutoff line, so he's able to at least not have to worry as much. Of course, Byron's in the red zone, or in the danger zone. So is Kyle Busch, but not by very much. Of course, Michael McDowell will have to have a miracle happen for him to be able to make it out of this, which we both predicted that he wouldn't. So this playoff, some of the drivers we didn't think would be on the on the outside looking in this early are already there. So a lot of work for those guys to do. For Byron, for Kyle Busch, for Alex Bowman, those guys got to be able to figure something out for this next race here at Richmond and recover and try to get back into the playoff contention. So a lot of interesting storylines here for sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the guys, I mean, especially Kyle Busch going to two of his. I mean, we can always say, is there really a bad track for Kyle Busch? But, Richmond and Bristol, he's are two of his best racetracks of all time. So, can he go and get a win? He hasn't won a whole hell of a lot um, since he won that second championship. Him and Adam Stevens were ended up breaking up. Ben Bayshore's had kind of a baptism by fire this year as a crew chief. The stupidity of the lack of practice and the lack of qualifying, I think, has not helped Kyle's cause. When he runs the truck or you run an Xfinity car, he seemed to run better. But of course, because of the Kyle Busch rules, he can't do that all that often. I think he should have a waiver in the truck series because it's his trucks. I don't mind that because it's his equipment. I don't really care for him driving a Joe Gibbs racing car, though it's proof that literally if it isn't him or Ty Gibbs driving it, they don't really do anything. So I guess there is something to that. But he's the only one of that group that is outside of the current cutoff. I mean, yeah, Reddick he was grinding his way in there. It's gonna be tight, really. I mean, you look at from Christopher Bell all the way to William Byron. There's a lot of volatility there. Even Brad Keselowski. I mean, I think right now the cutoff line is really seventh. After that, you can look at any of the five that are in right now after one race, and then the next three that are out. And of that, you're talking of eight drivers for five spots. Um, and that doesn't take into account if somebody wins or any of that crap. McDowell ain't going anywhere. He sucks. That's fine. He was running in the top 10, but he put the car in the wall when you're running in the top 10, because that's what he does. And he doesn't even know if he's going to have a job next year, which I think is karma for all the shitty driving he's done over his career. Um, that's We'll get into Richmond for this weekend, the doubleheader, Xfinity and Cup. Speaking of Xfinity, Gagson went and won his first race of the year, his third race of his career, and broke a 49 race winless streak in the process. Which, I mean, when you consider the guys that have driven the 9 car before him, whether it was Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, William Byron, they all won championships. And they're in, at least in one case, of course, Chase Elliott, of course, is a champion. In Tyler Reddick's case, he's won 2 Xfinity titles. William Byron won the one title and was kind of around. And then you have Gagson, who's a D bag and an LCD inbred. But the fact of the matter is, he had a great car on Saturday and went out there and won at Darlington. So he's locked himself in to the playoff. It was kind of tight for a little bit there. It wasn't like he was going to miss because he has enough points, even though he missed a race, I think. He's now only 12 points behind Justin Haley for fourth. Really, Cindric and Allmendinger are still battling with a couple races to go for that regular season championship, which is intriguing. Haley and Gagson are battling there. Jeb Burton's in his own world. Myatt Snyder, if he hadn't won at Homestead, would be out of the playoff right now, which is embarrassing. He would be, or no, he wouldn't be out of the playoff. He'd actually be 12th. He'd be behind Riley Herbst, which is pretty terrible, to say the least. We will go into the results of Darlington, the VFW Sport Clip Haircuts, VFW Help a Hero 200. Gagson, Harrison Burton, Cindric, Haley, Jeb Burton, Allgaier, Reddick in the 23 car. Clements finished 8th. Snyder, 9th. Alex LeBay gets a top 10. Hamlin led the most laps at a speeding penalty, finished 12th. Allmendinger led 24 laps, finished 20th. Hemrick led 18 laps and finished in 24th after starting on pole. So yeah, I mean that is basically what it was there. Gagson gets a win. He needed it. What else did you get out of that deal on Saturday, Josh, in regards to the Xfinity series?
Yeah, I mean, Gregson follows it up with the news he's returning to JRM with the win. So a little bit of positive momentum for sure. I don't think he's going to do anything really with it, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But Cindric has had a bad couple of weeks, crashing and not finishing races, but comes here and finishes third and ends up being only 1 point behind H. Allmendinger, who was a disappointing 20th after starting second in this race and led 24 laps. So that was a disappointing finish for Allmendinger in the fight for the title. Now allows Austin Cindric another say in this battle for the Xfinity title or regular season title. And of course, you had Denny Hamlin getting a speeding penalty, which basically took him out of this one and spun out in this race as well. So this was a interesting race, and nothing really. I mean, it wasn't really like exciting, but I mean, it was the finish was somewhat interesting with Gregson and Burton somewhat battling for the race win there at the end. But of course, that's how it goes sometimes, and you have the race like that. But the title fight should be interesting to watch as we go throughout the rest of the year. And Gragson's going to put his name in the bowl for possibly winning this title, which don't think it'll happen, but it should be interesting with the way how these rounds work. It could have some uh, good fortune fall his way for sure. Some other guys that finished fairly well. I mean, Ty Dillon finished 13th for the Hour Motorsports guys. Ryan Seek, in 11th. Alex LeBay finishing 10th. Jeremy Clements finishing in 8th. So a lot of the kind of midfield guys here in Xfinity, backmarker type guys getting a lot good finishes as well. So this is a interesting race, but we'll have to see what happens here in Xfinity on Saturday at Richmond.
In a race which Dale Jr. will be running. His one race he runs a year will be this weekend at Richmond. He won a few years ago, actually,
Yeah, 2016.
2016, and I know Josh, as a Dale Jr. fan, it's got to be nice. And though I will say this about Darlington, the one thing I did enjoy about the weekend is because of the throwback aspect is when the three sons all get to sit there and announce. That's the best announce crew NBC has.
Yeah,
Dale Jr., Kyle Petty, and DJ. Because the fact of the matter is, Dale Jr. kind of is able to go and guide the ship, and then he lets Kyle Petty go off on whatever tangent, and they all start laughing because Kyle Petty's nuts. And then DJ is the voice of reason, just like his dad was for all those years. And um, that I enjoyed thoroughly. Um, and Dale Jr. getting back in a race car, it's always great. He always says he doesn't know when he's going to stop. I don't think he's going to stop. He owns his own cars. He can, if they're going to run 5 full time cars next year, I don't think he's going to stop. So, the Cup thing went away because of how ridiculous charters are, but I guess he's going to expand more in the Xfinity series, which is positive for the series because they need depth of talent. So
yeah,
we'll get into that in a little bit. Maybe he could hire this guy. Maybe he can hire Sheldon Creed because the guy's a playoff beast. Wins his second race but swept the season at Darlington. Third race win of the year, second consecutive in the playoff. And for a guy who doesn't know what he's going to be doing next year, he's a pretty talented race car driver. But it's not been in. You can't deny. It would be hard to deny that he was that he didn't have the talent anyways after last year, and even getting in an ARCA car after never really driving pavement either. He wins, locks himself. He was already locked into the second round anyway. John Hunter, with the points, locks himself in. They'll be at Bristol, not this coming week, but the following week on Thursday night. In regards to the race result at the In It to Win It 200, that's just great. Creed,
Sheldon
Sheldon,
Creed, yeah, in it
yeah,
to win it.
he definitely is because he doesn't have a job. So, him and John Hunter, top 2 drivers right now in this series, and they proved it. Friesen, they kept on selling that he had new tires, and they were hoping he would catch up. He didn't. Uh, It's not a dirt race. It's probably why. Gilliland Gillen finished fourth. Parker Kligerman started 34th and finished fifth. That Charlie Henderson Food Country team has definitely made strides. And Kligerman, once upon a time was a Penske junior driver. He won 9 races in the ARCA Series one year when the ARCA Series is actually legitimate or somewhat legitimate. Grant Enfinger finished sixth in the 98 truck. That they talk about giving waivers to all these D bags who miss races. It's like you should give a waiver to Grant Enfinger and Josh Berry, and it would be better for the playoffs. It would put a car that actually has a chance to win and actually compete than somebody who sucks. But whatever. I mean, the playoffs are going on for the trucks, but that's tangent. Chandler Smith, Johnny Sutter, Smith and Zane Smith and Matt Crafton, Carson Hocevar 11th, Austin Hill finished 12th, so it wasn't his best outing. In regards to talking about Josh Berry, finished 17th. Colby Howard driving the 9 truck actually finished 13th. That 9 truck is taken once they actually put decent drivers in it. They've actually been pretty good. I mean, it's hard to believe I said that Kobe Howard's a decent driver considering how bad he drives in the Xfinity series, but you know, Lawless Allen wanted to beat the crap out of Derek Kraus, so that was interesting. Um, Dawson Cram, former guest on the show, 23rd. Ben Rhodes finished 34th, so it wasn't a great day for him there. As it stands, he has enough of a points gap. The Crafton's 35 ahead, Friesen, Rhodes. Right now, Rhodes is fifth with plus 15, Todd Gillen plus 11, Hocevar plus 8, Austin Hills plus 5 over Zane Smith. Chandler Smith had problems the previous race at Gateway, at the first race at Gateway, and that made the gap. So now they'll go to Bristol, and Zane Smith's going to have to be ahead of Austin Hill by 5 positions or win. Chandler Smith definitely would probably have to win or need a miracle, something happen to one of these other guys to go and get into the playoff. But yeah, Sheldon Creed, he's on a heater. He's like Robbie Gordon 2.0. But when he's on, he's one of the coolest guys to watch in a NASCAR vehicle, and he belongs in one of these top 3 series and not going back to his SST, which is seemingly what this line is going to. That he's probably going to go back to SST if he doesn't have a job in NASCAR next year, which would be criminal considering he won a truck championship and he has a chance to win a second consecutive one.
Yeah, I mean, Sheldon Creed with this title fight here. I mean, we didn't think he'd really be a player. We thought maybe he might be a player, but he didn't have a whole lot of momentum coming into this playoffs this year. But now he's gone on a bit of a tear here, winning the last 2 races in a row. Of course, in it to win it, like I said earlier, it seems like he's got the car to beat now, and it's like maybe they've been hiding something for most of the regular season. Now that they've come to the playoffs, maybe they're working the field the new one, I guess, and we'll have to see what happens there. But the talk of the season so far has been John Hunter Nemechek, and yeah, he finished in second and led second most laps to Sheldon Creed. But now it seems like he doesn't really have a whole lot going for him, although he's still only 2 points out of the point standings, or 2 points out of the point standings behind Sheldon Creed. But of course, should be very safe to make the next round. But of course, hasn't won anything yet in the playoffs, and that may change or may not change coming up here the next race for the trucks. But it seems like Sheldon Creed's been pretty dominant. Todd Gilliland finished 4th, but needs a whole lot of help going into the last race for the trucks, and being buried down in 10th. So that's going to be taking a lot for him to be able to make it into the next round. And like you said, Chandler Smith Zane Smith, those guys also have to have a lot happen for them to be able to make it into the truck playoffs. But Ben Rhodes didn't have a really good outing. Finished 7 laps down, so unfortunate for him, but still has a little bit of cushion there to lay on for this points fight. And I think for the rest of the field, uh, really would have been a good opportunity to win because this playoffs can be very volatile, can be very interesting with the way the events happen, and may find yourself eliminated before you know it. So some of these guys like Crafton, who's sitting quietly in third for this title fight, finishing in 10th place after starting second. So you have to wonder what happened to them. They just didn't, because they just didn't have the best car, unlike Sheldon Creed and unlike John Herman Nemechek. So it should be an interesting fight. For the Truck Series. One race left in the first round. We'll have to see what happens here as we move forward.
Yeah, and they'll have time off before they go to Bristol, and then the schedule kind of gets shoddy as we go along here. The rest of the season, it'll be 4 races to go after Bristol. Um, they'll run back to back weeks to end the season at Martinsville and Phoenix, but in between that, there'll be some time. So, Truck Series, as you per usual, have a weird end. The last thing we'll go over before we get into the roundup, there's talk of the what has was once the Bush Clash, the Bud Shootout, the whatever they called it. Now it's the Advanced Auto Parts Clash. This past year, they actually ran it on the Daytona road course. I don't even remember the race. Whether I
Kyle
was
Busch won.
Kyle Busch one. Okay, well that's
Yeah,
part of the
when
reason.
Chase Elliott and Ryan Blaney got into it in the NASCAR chicane there, and then
Oh,
Kyle
okay.
Busch passed them.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, all right, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I didn't. I was bowling, I think, and then also it was on the Daytona road course, so it made no sense for me to care. So now they're trying to figure out a way for less people to care. There's an idea that they're going to race in the LA Coliseum, uh, home of once upon a time they used to run the Supercross at the LA Coliseum. They used to run the Mickey Thompson Stadium trucks there. Um, they're gonna put an oval in a football stadium, kind of like Bowman Gray or like Soldier Field, and run the All Star race there or run this clash there with the Gen 7 cars. Supposedly, um, I think that we're getting to a point. I mean, I know NASCAR's a lot like WWE, and I emphasize WWE because AEW is actually about writing interesting content and having storylines and people that fans want to see. Um, NASCAR is about gimmicks, and this is yet another one. I don't see what they gain. I mean, here's a reality: going to Daytona and wrecking a bunch of race cars doesn't make a lot of sense. So why do you have to fly all the way out to LA to do the same thing? You could go to Five Flags Speedway and do the same thing. I don't know about you, Josh. It makes no sense. They don't even have a pole award anymore because you're not even having qualifying. I mean, they could have a 5 car race for all the people that for all the qualifying they're going to be doing this year. For all the, I think William Byron qualified on pole for 2 of the road courses. What is it?
Alex Bowman,
Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick,
Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson. I think that's it. I believe. Maybe there's others that I'm just, but that's it. You literally have 3 Joe Hendrick guys and Tyler Reddick, and then you've set the rest of the qualifying based on the stupid algorithm. So then they're gonna come up with some cockamamie scheme to figure out, everybody who's in the playoffs will make it in. Then if you were born in an odd number year, you'll make it in. If you're in an even numbered car that has lineage to somebody, something or another, you're in. That's what they've done with all these all-star races. Maybe you just have to stop having them. Maybe there's no point of them. We go and take a break, redo it, come up with an idea. I don't know, maybe try it at Nashville Fairgrounds. If SRX could do it, why can't NASCAR do it? That might be an idea. Um, Maybe go to the Milwaukee Mile. How about that? It'll be hard, it'd be tough to pass, whatever, but go to the Milwaukee Mile. If ARCA can do it, instead of
Yeah.
going to the freaking LA Coliseum. I mean, it's stupid. I'd rather they go and run up the hill and drive down the hill like they used to do in Mickey Thompson and the Supercross days. That would be cooler than them driving around on an oval and running over each other. It'd just be like the Daytona, whatever, bash at the beach or whatever the hell they had in the backstretch on the
Oh
in the
yeah,
infield.
Bash there. Or no,
Yeah,
no, it's Battle at the Beach. Yeah.
battle at the beach where we got the late
Kyle
Mike's,
Larson.
yeah, the late Mike Stefanik meme, angry meme,
Oh yeah,
like
this
that
is
came from that.
bullshit.
Yeah, when I think it was
Steve Park.
Steve Park used them up. Um, which, I mean, come on, that's the only way you could pass. That's what Kyle Larson did. I think he used up
Yeah,
half the field.
he wrecked CM Falk off the last corner. That was his
Yes,
first win in NASCAR.
yeah. See, yeah, yeah, that's a name I haven't heard in a while. So yeah, I guess I'll let you go on this, Josh, because you posted that. I didn't take much from that, but when you posted that, it got me going. So then I figure I'll let you go on that before we get into the roundup.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting concept. I guess they're gonna. I mean, we've seen it before. There's what like one of the stadium super. I don't. It may have been stadium super trucks or one of the
It
other
was
series.
SST,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They raced on the, or I guess yeah, they raced. They paved the track portion of the Coliseum, and then they also went up into the not grandstands, but up into the stadium itself and did that. But of course, those trucks have the capability of doing that, and of course, NASCAR would just be on the track. And from what I've seen, seems like they would have this in between the NFC Championship, AFC Championship weekend, or the Pro Bowl and the Super Bowl. So the Super Bowl next year being like February 13th, 2022, and then the Pro Bowl would be 2 weekends before that, and in between that we'd have NASCAR racing at the LA Coliseum, and that would be interesting, I guess, for TV rights because it seems like Fox has the TV rights to both the Daytona 500 and whatever this race would be, and then of course NBC has the Super Bowl this year, so there might have to be some cross promotion or they have to work out a deal where NBC broadcasts this race.
Yeah, because the Super Bowl's on NBC this year.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. But we already have a short track like this where we raced around a football field. It's called Bowman Gray one. They just race at Bowman Gray. That would be better than what they're trying to do and wouldn't cost any money because all they have to do is just run these cars on at Bowman Gray. I mean, they've had races at Bowman Gray forever, and they raced in the K&N series. They've raced modifieds there. They had a freaking TV series with History Channel with this track. I mean, why can't they just race there? They wouldn't have to do any track prep or anything like that as far as repaving or paving a new track. So I don't know where they're going with this. I mean, exposing it to a new audience in the middle of the NFL's biggest week. Maybe there's something there, but as far as actual attention, to the series, putting minds to watching the series, paying attention to it, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some people attending, but let's remember, Southern California isn't really a good motorsports market. We've seen in the past. Fortunately, Riverside did not survive, and Ontario Motor Speedway did not survive. Auto clubs being converted into a short track, but they've had lackluster attendance for many years now. So who knows how long they'll be on schedule? And it's going to be interesting to see if this actually goes through, and if it does, what it will look like. But NASCAR, the Cup Series, has not raced inside a stadium since Soldier Field all the way back in the 40s, so or 50s, whenever it was. So guess it's going to be a throwback to that era when they had a racetrack at Soldier Field. But this one's kind of out of left field and have been kind of interested, but also very confused what uh, this move is going to be.
Yeah, and you know, you brought up all the short track, all the other tracks that have failed in LA, and there's Irwindale. They used to run a All Star race for
Yeah,
K and
the
N,
All
and
Star Series showdown.
yeah, the Toyota All Star Showdown for years. The Irwin, I was for years because California Speedway sucked. I was like, go to Irwindale. Irwindale is still open for all intents and purposes. Why can't you just go there? Um, I don't understand what the deal. Like they come up with like it's almost like they want to come up with excuses to not go to tracks that are already. They're like, oh, there isn't a safer barrier there. Oh, there isn't this there. Invest. NASCAR seems to be flush with money because of these TV contracts. Go to frickin' Nashville Fairgrounds and put a damn safer barrier there. Go to Irwindale or go to all these. I don't get it. I don't understand what the goal is. I don't understand what going and having a demo derby at the LA Coliseum is going to do for exposing, bringing fans into it. Most of the stuff that NASCAR does anymore doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me anyway. So now you're going to destroy a whole bunch of expensive race cars. They'll destroy them during the Daytona 500 next year. Anyway, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. It makes no sense. It's basically it's really idiotic. Um, unless you're gonna come up with some sort of like, oh, you're gonna remake the Coliseum into some like speed bowl or some shit, and then you try to go and do land speed records. I'm crying. I don't know. There's got to be a better idea than that. But then, of course, the Formula One is going to be racing around freaking Hard Rock Stadium. So I mean, that's where we're at. And what is it? NASCAR is so desperate to run a street race that they're trying to come up with gimmicks in different cities. So I don't know. It makes no goddamn sense. They need to get they announced that, or at least the rumors are, Pocono now is going to fall to one date, one race after Michigan only had one race this year for Gateway. So Gateway will be on the Cup schedule. So that'll be something. Gateway is one of the best run tracks there is now. So in that sense, you're going to get good promotion. There's a lot of history in the St. Louis area with drivers, Rusty Wallace being the most notable in that. His two moronic brothers, not so much. Um, so we'll see how that goes. The Northeast gets screwed again. There's only one race in New Hampshire, there's one race at Dover, one race at Pocono, and then one race at Watkins Glen. And then we just have more races in the Midwest, mostly in the Midwest and the Southeast. And then they go to the West Coast, but they go to crappy racetracks in the West Coast. So that's NASCAR for you. They're trying to become a regional dot of a series like they were prior to like the explosion and the of the sport in the 90s. They're trying to basically reverse time with some of the changes that they're making here. But I guess we'll see about how all that goes and what comes of that in the grand scheme of things for if they're actually going to be racing uh, racing on a football field. That'll be something for sure. GSP roundup will start with F3, and what was it last week? The Dennis Hauger had a struggle the first two races, but in the end he came through in race 3 and won in the feature race. So for Prema over Clement Novalak and Alexander Smollier, Jack Doohan, Kyle Collette, the top 5. Logan Sargent had a great weekend last weekend at Zandvoort. Jack Crawford, another American, finished 7th. He got a podium. Vesti, Leclerc, Martin's the top 10. In race 1, We had Leclerc, Sargent, Iwasa in the top three with Jack Crawford fourth. Collette, Doohan, Hauger, Martins, Vesti, Caldwell. And then Victor Martins won race two over Novalak, Vesti, Kyle Collette, David Schumacher, Ollie Caldwell, Artur Leclerc, Jack Crawford, Matteo Nini, Logan Sargent. In the drivers' standings, Hauger has a 45-point lead on Jack Doohan. So basically, um, it's between those two guys, but really Dennis Hauger would have to shit the bed to not win this championship and move up to Formula 2 next year. A battle between behind them, Novalak, Martins, Vesti are only separated by 5 points. Smollier is sixth. Logan Sargent has had a nice resurgence here in the last second part of the year, scoring points in every round, albeit there probably was like smaller points. He's not as far up as he probably wishes he was, but considering the team he's in, when he got called in relative to some of these other guys who had testing in the Formula 3 car, uh, he's in a good place. He's ahead of, Artur Leclerc, who's in his car basically from last year, David Schumacher for Trident, Jack Crawford's a Trident driver, so those are better teams. And he's got the Charouse team in sixth in the constructors basically on his own back. They're only 13 points behind High Tech. And Prema, of course, is best team, Trident second. And so, that's a pretty good deal there for Logan Sargent. Hopefully, somebody gives him a shot. If it isn't going to be in open wheel here, maybe in America, maybe in I don't know, sports cars. That'd be a novel concept in regards to utilizing the talent that is Logan Sargent. Going into the W Series, they're they raced at Zandvoort, and they're going to be race. They have a break here of a month and a half before they go to Coda, as long as everything holds up for health wise and everything. Alice Powell and Jamie Chadwick are tied in points at 109. Emma Kimmelainen is third, near Naria Marti fourth. Fabienne Wohlwend is fifth. Sarah Moore, Sidorkova, Balin Garcia, Marta Garcia, Abby Eaton, who was a Stig in the Grand Tour, and Jessica. So there's actually a pretty good points fight from 8th through 12th, and I think those are for all the positions. If you finish in the top 12 or something, you get brought back for the next year. So I don't know if that's still the case. Sabri Cook is the only driver that hasn't scored this year. Vicky Perea is very pretty, can't really drive, has only 1 point. So that's something. Going into, they show the drivers' standings. I'm looking for the race results. So going into last race at Zandvoort, in qualifying, or the race there, Alice Powell beat Chadwick and Kimmelainen after Kimmelainen qualified on pole over Powell and Chadwick. Not really a whole lot of change in position. Marty, Hawkins, Eaton pulling Balin Garcia, Sarah Moore, and Mickey Koyama finish in the top 10. Sabri Cook finished 14th. So they'll be racing again at Coda in October, hopefully. We'll go to MotoGP, Moto2 at Aragon, and that's the The MotoGP Aprilia test. He's happy. Keeps SRT MotoGP seat for Aragon. So that's cool. Jake Dixon will be making his MotoGP. He'll be racing again this coming weekend. Injected, I'll do more damage. Huh. Javi Vieja turned down the ride. That's interesting. We'll get into the standings for MotoGP. Fabio Quartararo has his 59, 65-point lead over Joan Mir. Mir has a 4-point lead on Zarco, 5-point lead on Bagnaia. And then Jack Miller's 5th, Brad Binder 6th. Vinales is not racing right now, but he might later in the year. Oliveira, Alicia Espargaro, Jorge Martin, the top 10. And all the Spanish riders crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 riders this year out of the 29 that have started a race in the MotoGP are Spanish riders. Yeah, I guess, and the people who run it are Spanish too, so all makes sense. And you wonder why the series is dropping dead anyway. Let's see here. In regards to the standings for Moto 2, Remy Gardner, 44 points at Raul Fernandez. Fernandez has an 8-point lead on Marco Bezzecchi. Looks like all those guys are going to be moving up to Moto GP. Joe Roberts is 12th in points. And then Cameron Beaubier is 17th in points as a rookie in the top half. And Triumph extends Moto GP engine deal for 3 years. Super. That's great. Then IMSA will be racing at Laguna Seca this coming weekend. First race in a little bit for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. They'll be running the sprint, a 2-hour, 40-minute race, the Hyundai Monterey Sports Car Championship. Then they'll come back. They'll run at the Grand Prix of Long Beach, VIR. There'll be split races, I think, in regards to classes. And then Petit Le Mans will be in November, a little later than what they used to do. So that'll be interesting there. For after a month-long race, yeah. So then Daytona, yeah. I'm trying to. It's the same thing I do every single week. I think you'd learn your lesson. In regards to Monterey Sports Car Championship session. Oh, so they will run. It's a full. I don't know. That's just overall points at the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Okay, so it will be a full field deal with they'll have DPI LMP2, no LMP3. Okay, so no LMP3. So DPI LMP2, GTLM GTD in regards to the 26 car field, the Cadillacs of Chip Ganassi, the Mustang sampling JDC Miller Motorsports, number 5. So Renger van der Zande, Kevin Magnussen for Ganassi, Tristan Vautier, Loic Duval, and then Felipe Nasr and Pippo Durrani for the Whelen Engineering 31 car. Then the Honda the Acuras, the Konica Minolta Wayne Taylor car, Ricky Taylor, Philippe Albuquerque, and Dane Cameron, Olivier Pla. And then the Mazda of Olivier Jarvis, Harry Tinknell, who's looking at Indy cars. 4 LMP2 cars, John Ferrano, Gabriel Aubry, Tower Motorsport, the Win Autosport, number 11 of Stephen Thomas and Tristan Nunez, the Aero Motorsport car, Dwight Merriman and Ryan DL, PR1 Matheson car of Ben Keating, Mikkel Jensen. A couple of them were at Le Mans. And GT Le Mans, the 2 Corvettes, Garcia and Jordan Taylor, and then Milner and Tandy, along with Cooper McNeil and Matt Campbell in the WeatherTech Racing Porsche, who had a good, won the last race, I believe, off the top of my head, and then they had a good run at Le Mans as well, given their circumstance. Then 13 entries in GTD, Brian Sellers and Madison Snow in the Palmer Racing Lambo, Zachary Robichon and Lawrence Vantor in the Pfaff Motorsports Porsche. Got some new funding, supposedly, from Marshall Pruitt reporting. Frankie Montecalvo, Zach Veach in the Lexus number 12, the Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Then Aaron Teelitz, Jack Hawksworth in the 14 Vassar Sullivan Lexus. Trent Hinman, Patrick Longwright Motorsports Porsche. Roman DeAngelis, Ross Gunn in the Harder Racing Aston. Second Aston Harder Racing car with Ian James and Alex Riberas. Richard Highstand and Jeff Westfall in the 39 Carbon Audi. Then the Magnus Archangel Acura of John Potter and Andy Lally. Besh Schulheimer and Mark Miller in the Gradient Racing Acura. Then the Jeff Kingsley, Mario Farnbacher, and the Compass Racing Acura. Rob Ferriel and Catherine Legg in the Hardpoint EBM Porsche. And Bill Auberlin, Robbie Foley in the Turner Motorsport BMW. That's the field for this weekend at Laguna Seca. It would be nice if the IMSA website was easier to navigate. In regards to Indy Lights, Rasmus Lind got a call up to go and drive for the Juncos team this coming weekend for the rest of the season. So that's a good deal for him. David Malukas has a 3-point lead on Kyle Kirkwood for the championship. Linus Lundqvist is third. Ben Peterson and Devlin DeFrancesco is rumored to be moving up to Andretti Autosport next year for Indy cars. So that'll be, we'll see how he does the next 3 races. Just go Malukas some points lead, Lundqvist end of season stretch, and then Rasmus Lind does it for the final 3 events. The number 51, 2019 runner up to in the Indy Pro 2000, and then now he's good Indy about the Indy Lights season. Lindgren, yeah. So hopefully for him, he'll be able to make something happen in regards to that, and how it goes for Robert. Yeah. So now they have 3 races to go. They'll run Portland. They run 2 races, so run 2 at Portland or 3 rounds to go. They'll have Portland, Monterey, or Laguna Seca, and then Mid Ohio in October, 1st of October. And they'll have, so then they have that right there. Qualifying record is Pato Award in 2018, 102.8074, 112.573. Renus VK race record for fastest lap, 103.1665. That'll be something to see right there. I'm trying to look for an entry list, but it's as it stands. We got these guys. We're 1, 2, 3. 14 cars, but yeah, he's replacing Toby Sowery in the 51 car. God, Stingray Rob's a weird looking dude. And then Alex Peroni looks like a wannabe Daniel Ricciardo. David Malukas has a square head. Um, Benjamin Peterson looks like a Q-tip. So does Linus Lundqvist, frankly. Um, Devlin DeFrancesco looks like a freaking maggot, which is supposedly the rumor anyway. He's basically like a wannabe um, root beer float head. And speaking of root beer float head, the rumor is that Dick Tantrum is supposedly coming to run Indy cars here in this next couple of weeks. Probably run for Rick Ware at the rate we're going. So it makes perfect sense that Dick Tantrum will do that after this race, and he'll run this weekend at Italy for the Formula 2, and then he'll go and run an Indy car. Since now all these F2 and F3 drivers are thinking about what are we going to do for our career, because there's no options for us here in in Formula One, because we're never gonna get a ride. So they're like, oh, let's go to IndyCar if we have enough money. In regards to that, we can go, and it's been a while for F2 to have a race. So the Enzo Fittipaldi, he's gonna be driving in the Charus team. I think they're going. They have the point standings right now. Oscar Piastri has a 5-point lead over Guan Yu Zhou, and then Schwartzman is third. He has, what is it, 17 points behind, and then Dick Tantrum is 19 points behind in fourth. Yuri Vips in fifth. Teo Pocher is sixth as a rookie. Drogovic, Liam Lawson, Jan Daruvula, Richard V. Shore. Lundgaard, of course, has struggled this year, but he did really good in IndyCar at Indy Road Course. Yeah, you have some of these other guys. Dalita still has a ride, though. That's sad, but we'll see how Enzo Fittipaldi does. And now the weekend goes. Piastri and Guan Yu Zhou, they know they're probably not going to be going to Formula One next year. So it's a battle just to go and have the super license points to possibly become a test driver, really, and maybe run another year in the Formula 2 in that sense. But they'll run 3 races here. The rest of their schedule, they're going to be busy now. They'll run Monza, then they'll run Sochi, and then they'll have a couple more. They'll have a 2-month break, and then they'll run Saudi and Abu Dhabi, which and then Jack Hughes will be coming back to run Formula 2 to replace Jack Aiken after his injuries at Spa during the Spa 24 hour. Yeah, so that'll be and some 4 points and finishes and made. Yeah, that's convenient, considering that he's been getting beat by freaking Logan Sargent, but that's what money can do. So we'll see what Enzo can do in that F2 car, and I mean they replaced Beckman, who's the one that scored all their points for him, so that's even more convenient. Let's get into the Italian Grand Prix, Josh. I mean, it starts and ends with Max versus Lewis. Is this a must-win situation in your mind for Lewis Hamilton to get number 100 at the Italian Grand Prix before they take a short break before the next set of races to kind of stem the tide Uh, I mean, the whatever you want to say about Spa happened, but they've won 2 consecutive races. Last week was basically a Red Bull benefit. Mercedes had problems in practice. They couldn't practice and practice due with Lewis. They completely shit the bed in the race with strategy. It's I mean, time is running out. I mean, you've got 9 races to go in this championship as it stands. We don't know how many races they're really going to have. They'll have Russia. We don't know for sure if they're going to Turkey. They're in a red zone deal, or England is counts Turkey as a red zone. So having to bring travel and bring all these people, then you have the traveling from um, the U.S. Grand Prix, Mexican Grand Prix, and Brazilian Grand Prix. Um, like that's also all kind of sketchy. And then you have the um, Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi to end the season. That will be, um, I mean, those two are going to go off. So we already know that. And Russia's going to go off, and Italy's going to go off. But after that, there's 4 races there that we don't really know what's going to happen. So I mean, is it real? I think we're in a crunch time situation, and I think the question does lie: is this a must-win situation for Lewis Hamilton to keep this champion? Even though the championship's only 3 points right now, and they still have the lead in the constructors and Mercedes, is this a must-win situation for Lewis coming into Monza this weekend?
I don't think it's absolutely a must-win situation, but it would certainly help if he did win. I mean, if Max Verstappen wins this race, and let's say he gets let's say he wins the race, Lewis win or gets second, that's 7 points. If Lewis gets the fastest lap, that's 6 points that he lost to Verstappen. If it's the other way around, Verstappen fastest lap and wins the race, then it's 8 points that Lewis has lost, and so anywhere from 9 to 11 points that Lewis would be behind now, which isn't a lot, but at the same time, it still takes a lot of work to make it up. So I think Lewis, well, not necessarily in a absolute must win situation. I think it would help him greatly if he did win this weekend. And I think it's going to be a tall order. We'll have to see what kind of pace that they have this track. They're definitely going to have to go light on the downforce probably. And with the corners, it's going to be a lot of heavy braking as well. So they're going to have a really balanced car, but you're going to have to take some downforce out for speed probably to try to get as much pace down the long straights of Monza. I think for Verstappen, they've got to be able to just continue to establish the same type of pace that they've had throughout the year. So it's going to just be a battle of cat and mouse. I feel like between Verstappen and Hamilton, and of course there's the strategy aspect of it. And it seems like as of last week, Mercedes was kind of reactionary, I think, to the pace of Red Bull. So I think if they're able to um, have a somewhat good of a pace and they can maintain within, say, like 1 second, 1 second and a half behind Max Verstappen, I think it'd make the strategy decisions a little bit easier for Mercedes. But if they get behind, they are going to have to figure out some kind of Hail Mary strategy, I guess, to be able to win the Grand Prix. And then, of course, there's tire wear. We talked about Kimi Räikkönen a few years ago, or a little bit ago in this show, and a few years ago he could have won this Grand Prix, but had a lot of tire wear at the end of the race, and then just didn't have the pace that Lewis did in that one. Well, I think there's a lot of potential here for tire wear as well, and it's going to come down to who can manage the tires the best between the two drivers. So that's another factor as well. But it all really starts with qualifying once again. Does can Lewis maybe pull out a surprise and win the pole, or does Max Verstappen continue to start first in these qualifying sessions and give himself a huge advantage going into the race? And then, of course, the start. If Lewis can get a good start and maybe battle Verstappen the first couple of laps before they settle into the race, that's going to be a factor as well if either of them are able to get a good start going into this one. But I think for me, I mean, I'm gonna pick Verstappen in this to win the race. I just think they have the overall pace to win the Italian Grand Prix, and I don't think they'll have any issues doing that.
Yeah, I think if Max wins this race the way that this calendar's landing right now, it's going to be the first step towards a world championship for them in Red Bull. Um, I will go with Lewis and I'll go with Mercedes to get the win. They're generally show better on longer circuits. Even at Ricard, they had some semblance of pace, albeit they didn't have great strategy, which is why they lost there. I think if they had run the Canadian Grand Prix, they probably had a chance there. Um, they need to win this race. They know they do. After last week, they know they do. So we will see how that all works out. I mean, as I think McLaren will respond towards Ferrari, and that'll be a closer battle this weekend. Of course, home for Ferrari. Leclerc's won this race before, but Daniel Ricciardo loves running at Monza, and I think McLaren's going to respond there. And you can't count out AlphaTauri. It's a home game for them too. They always seem to run well in Italy, no matter what track they're running in Italy. And of course, Gasly, defending race winner. So we'll see about all that as we go into the Italian Grand Prix this weekend at Monza. Um, Another race will be the Grand Prix of Portland Indy cars, which will be it will be definitely interesting. Deep field. Uh, the Oliver Askew will be racing in the high V number 45 for Ray Hall. And Callum Ilott will be driving for Junkos Hollander in the number 77 car. And it's a deep field. You got the points battle. Pat O'Ward is 10 points out of Alex Palou. Joseph Newgarden, after his win at Gateway, is 22 points out. Scott Dixon is in fourth. He is 43 points behind. And then Marcus Ericsson is 60, it looks like, 60 back in fifth. So Portland is a tighter circuit. It's not as, I mean, there are long straights. You have probably two passing zones there at Portland. And Alex Palou, one at Barber, which I think might be as close to the track that you could compare to Portland. But of course, Pat O'Ward has won on an oval. He's won at the Detroit Street Course, and he's got great versatility. What are you looking for this weekend, Josh, in regards to this first of three races to end this IndyCar season? Who can take the upper hand? Will it be Palou? Will it be Pato O'Ward? Or are we, or should I, or we be looking at the champs? Scott Dixon, uh, Joseph Newgarden here to go and put the squeeze on these two young guns as we move towards Laguna Seca and Long Beach.
Well, I think the biggest question first is who can stay out of trouble. Because the last couple of races here in the season in IndyCar been quite wild. We've seen Alex Palou get taken out by Rinus VeeKay. He took out Scott Dixon with him. and also the last road course race we were at before when they were racing at Nashville, and they had a lot of wrecks there. And of course, Pato O'Ward himself got into a little bit of incidents there as well. And in general, that race was a wreck fest. So there's been problems with the Indy cars being able to start these races and start cleanly. And I think that's the first obstacle for the series and for the drivers. If they can get a clean start, they can race each other cleanly to be able to not crash out anybody. And I find it hard to think that they will have a clean start because that's kind of been the trend this year. And it's going to be interesting depending on where they start. If you start on pole, I think obviously shouldn't have any problems getting run over by anybody or crashing yourself out. But if you start in the middle of the pack, got to be really careful. Maybe be conservative for the first couple of laps of the race. So I think for Pato Award, they're going to be interested in protecting the lead that they have. They've got a 10-point lead over Pelot. I think they've got to be somewhat aggressive, but they've also got to be a little conservative and try to protect points and be able to survive and move on to Laguna Seca. And then for Alex Blow, they've got to, it's a little bit different for them. They've got to be able to win the race, but they also can't take themselves out. They can't afford it. And Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, they've had experience with this as well. I mean, Scott Dixon had an incident here a few years ago when they returned to Portland and then still recovered from that and ended up winning that championship that year in 2018. So he has experience with early race adversity, but I don't know if the same can be said just yet for guys like Alex Blow and Paddle Award. Newgarden also has a little bit of that experience. I mean, keep in mind the first race at Barber, he did crash out of that one, but now he's back into title contention. So he's got a chance here as well if they can have a good weekend, good qualifying, and they have good strategy as well. So that's what I look out for is who can stay out of trouble, because I think that's going to continue to determine the story that we're going to see with this points championship and in the IndyCar series. Because if Alex Palou crashes, that's probably his season right there. But if Pato O'Ward crashes, then that's an opening in the championship, and title battle is going to be a lot closer. Bringing Alex Blow back in for sure, then also bringing everybody else back in, like Scott Dixon, like Joseph Newgarden. So that's what I look out for, and maybe even Marcus Ericsson too. But that's what I look out for, just the trouble, who can avoid it. And also, I think you have to look at the strategy as well. We haven't been at this track in over a year, so since COVID. So that's going to be something to look out for as well. So I'm going to pick Scott Dixon to win, but look out for Palou and Award as they try to win the championship.
Yeah, I think that it really will be between the two young guns. Pato Ward has won twice in an Indy Lights car there a couple of years ago. And Renas VK also has won there. They have the records there with the speeds, as I was reading off their Indy Lights website. I mean, Toby Sowery actually won there the last time they were there. Now he doesn't even have a ride anymore. That's convenient. The last time they were at Portland was during Labor Day weekend, 2019. Will Power won over Rosenquist, who was driving for Ganassi. Alexander Rossi was third. Colton Herta was driving for Harding back then, started on pole. And Newgarden fifth. That was a race where Scott Dixon had issues. He finished 16th. In that race was last car running. You have some of these other guys. Was it Pat O'Ward wasn't in that race, of course, and what is it? Palou wasn't in that race either. So neither of them have run an Indy car at Portland, so they're at a disadvantage in that sense. For me, in regards to picking for this weekend's race, I think the safe bet. I mean, I don't know if it's really a safe bet I didn't say next year. Previous at this track. Safe bet in regards to this race. I mean, you picked Josh picked Scott Dixon. Newgarden hasn't had as much luck there. I'll probably just go with Newgarden, just to cover all bases. But I do believe Pat O'Ward and the Arrow McLaren team will be ready. Ganassi will be ready, and I wouldn't be shocked either if one or both of those, both O'Ward or Pillow, are up there with a chance to win on Sunday. We'll get to the Richmond doubleheader, and they're gonna talk. They're gonna have the what is it? The Federated Auto Parts 400 Cup race, the Go Bowling 250 earlier in the day. Go and bring up the entry list for Go Bowling 250 or the starting lineup. I mean, because it's already determined. Junebug will be starting 30th.
40th.
Yeah, 30 out of 40. CJ McLaughlin will be bringing out a caution at some point. Sam Mayer will be in a BJ McLeod car. Akinori Ogata will be driving for Jimmy Smut-Means. Spencer Boyd will be driving for what's his name? Mario Goslin. Josh Berry will be starting 33rd in the Jordan Anderson car. You have John Hunter will be driving the 26 Toyota. And let's see, Patrick Emmerling will be in the 23 for Our Motorsports. The 02 Ty Dillon will be driving it. So that's an improvement. Let's see right here. Ty Gibbs will be starting 15th. No sponsor, no shock. So that's that. I mean, I guess do we see a winner, first race win for somebody this year that's a regular? Do we see somebody who's making a one-off appearance, aka Junebug, get that win, which would make you happy? Or do we go with the status quo? Is it gonna be someone like Cindric or Allmendinger in this spot with a couple of races to go before they lock into their playoff format, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one because we haven't raced at Richmond yet this year. And it is a short track, a flat short track. And Justin Allgaier last year did win this race. And Jeb Burton, the 8 car, won or started or 21st, finished second in this race a year ago. So this could be an interesting one. I mean, we could see series regulars with Austin Cindric leading up front, AJ Allmendinger being up there. I mean, I think Justin Allgaier, previous winner at this race last year, I think he'll be up there too. There's a lot of things that could fall in this race, and it's going to be hard to tell who really has the good car in this race. I mean, we could see guys like even though Gagson could have a good run in this race. Even Jeb Burton could be a sneaky dark horse. Daniel Hemrick hasn't had a win yet this year. Certainly would help him short track. He's a short track guy, so it could play in his favor. Harrison Burton hasn't really been as good as it was a year ago, and could potentially have a chance to get a victory here. So a lot of chances here. I mean, this is the next last playoff race on schedule for Xfinity. So you figure the playoff regulars are going to try to be on their A game, try to pick up some momentum to go into the Xfinity playoffs. But I mean, for me, I mean, you said earlier, I mean, Dale Jr. started 30th or starting 30th, and then he'll go race this race and be up in the booth later for the Cup race. So I haven't really had a chance to pick Dale Jr. yet on this show, I think he raced at Homestead last year in one of those double headers. But I'm picking Dale Jr. to win. Why not? Sorry, I have to do it.
That's fine. I picked Briscoe to win Indy, and he ran over Denny Hamlin trying to, and after he'd already fucked up. So, I mean, the fact is making a homer pick is fine.
And he had the
Um,
Junior Motorsports shirt on too. So
yeah, so I mean, and to be fair, it's not a bad pick considering the Xfinity series anyway. For me, I'm gonna pick. Uh, I'll pick a. Yeah, I'm gonna end up going with AJ Allmendinger. I'll go with Allmendinger, who's always kind of shown a knack on these smaller, shorter, flat tracks, especially in a Cup car over time, and he's kind of figured out his way here. And now that he's in a battle for this regular season title and those 15 points, playoff points, and he knows those are going to be crucial against Austin Cindric. Um, I think he's going to be pushing to try to go and get this win here. I wouldn't doubt the possibility of Junebug or even Josh Berry coming from the back and doing something because Josh Berry, of course, won at Martinsville and now has a full time ride next year in that 8 car. Sam Mayer has a full time ride on, and sounds like all Geyer does, and that Gagson does, and that means there's 4 cars that are all accounted for. So hopefully Michael Annett catches a clue and gets out of his seat. That would be a bonus to society. In regards to Cup, though, I know we talked about it earlier, and Kyle Busch, of course, wrecking at Darlington. He's not too far out of the points. He's only 2 points out. It's a good racetrack for him, and but can he go out there and win here? He'll start. Kyle Busch will have to come from 15th. They seed him based on your results. The previous race, the 16 playoff drivers, from whatever your results, minus of course Denny Hamlin won, but Kyle Larson's ahead of him. I mean, I think Ross Chastain starts 17th. You have some of these other guys that are kind of more buried. There's only 37 cars in this race here on Saturday night. Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna pick Martin Truex. He's done really well recently at Richmond. The short tracks have kind of been in the wheelhouse of Toyota. I think there was a while there that I was going to races and Martin Truex won every single one. Yeah, especially at Richmond. He never was a short track guy, but now he's become one. He kind of needs something to kind of put kickstart him. It wouldn't be a shock to me if he goes out there on Saturday night and wins at Richmond, or if any Toyota really goes and wins at Richmond. I would say a dark horse selection. Um, I think the dark horse selection would be, and this is really going out on a limb, would be Almirola because he won at New Hampshire. Of course, it's a different type of racetrack, but it's got flatter characteristics. It's a track he's run well at before, even in a petty car way back when. It's a track that suits his driving style, his short track roots that he has. It wouldn't be a shock, even though the Stewart Haas cars are garbage this year for him. And that's what he's going to have to do basically to possibly make round 2 of this playoff. What do you think, Josh, in regards to your picks for Saturday night in the Cup race?
Yeah, I mean, I think for this one, Denny Hamlin won last week at Darlington. Probably should have won this race back in April. And this was kind of when the storyline of Denny Hamlin being unable to win started to kind of manifest itself. And I think he's got to win now. Maybe he'll figure it out again on Sunday or on Saturday night and go 2 in a row here at Richmond and led the most laps last time we were here at Richmond. So gonna go with the other Gibbs car and Denny Hamlin, go 2 for 2 to start the playoffs for the Cup Series. And it looks like, for him, I don't know, maybe he gets bumped in the last lap or something, but still managed to win the race. I mean, apparently he likes that now or something like that. So I hear, but apparently, that could happen. But I think a dark horse guy, I think maybe Tyler Reddick, in the chance that the high line comes into play this track, which it probably won't. But we've seen there's been a few Richmond races here in the past few years where the high line, real close to the wall, ended up being the preferred line during the race. So that could come into play, but I think that's definitely a possibility. But look out for maybe Alex Bowman to be another driver who could get a possible win. I mean, we saw him steal a win here in April, and maybe Greg Ives and that team have a another strategy like they had it back in April, where they either win the race or maybe they steal the top five and improve their points position, since they are kind of in that danger zone now in the playoffs. So that's also definitely a possibility there. So we'll have to see what happens, but I think Danny Hamlin ultimately wins this race.
So we're on the Toyota train there, and I figure that's what it's going to be. Um, of course, Larson's won there for Ganassi a few years ago, and his 1 year that he was actually really, really good for Ganassi in a playoff in 2017. So wouldn't be shocking to see that either. That's what NASCAR wants, to be fair. Getting into the NFL week one of the regular season coming up, fantasy football. In my case, I have, what is it, 5 teams, 3 that are one keeper league and 2 leagues in Yahoo that are the ones that I've really put in the effort in for many years. And then 2 like just draft and put in, and they'll kind of set their own deal on that. Not sure what you have, Josh, but I guess we can discuss your Jacksonville Jaguars, what you're looking for in the first year of Trevor Lawrence, and was it Urban Meyer, and then Trent Baalke, the whole brain trust there in Jacksonville, while the your ownership, Shad Khan and his son. His son's doing a great job with AEW. Maybe he needs to run the Jacksonville Jaguars too. Maybe he does run the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's why you got all those guys there. But what are you looking for in week one here? Um, Out of Trevor Lawrence and company, James Robinson fully installed as the number one running back, amongst other great players that you have there rebuilding from the 2017 AFC Championship team that basically most everybody has been traded or released to other teams across the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. The Jags are 3 point or 3.5 point favorites, I think, on the Texans. Yeah, I mean, for Trevor Lawrence, I mean, this whole year, this first game, I just want to see him be able to pass the ball and pass it effectively, pass it efficiently. Want to see the deep ball, utilize the speed of DJ Chark. Maybe we get in Tyron Johnson as well, kind of a steal from the rest of the league. Apparently, he was really good, really fast on the Chargers, and Jaguars have first position waiver wire so far this year, and they were able to pick him up, and he could be a deep threat, somebody that gets maybe a couple targets a game, but goes for those deep 40-yard passes. So that's going to be interesting. Look for running game. I think it is going to be based on the run. I think though the offense with James Robinson changed its number from 30 to 25. Looks a whole lot faster now just by changing the number. So we'll see how it looks like on the field. But he's really good in between the tackles. He's able to get good yards. And he doesn't have a burner type speed when you get him out into the open field, but he's able to make people miss when it comes to the first downs and being able to just get positive yards. So that's what I look for. Just be able to move the chains, make the throws that we need to make throws that we haven't seen Jacksonville quarterbacks make in a long time. Talk about the 2017 team. Blake Bortles wasn't really good throwing fade routes. Well, preseason final game, Trevor Lawrence throws a couple of fade touchdowns to favor Cooper, threw one to Laviska Chenault. So, there are throws that Trevor's been able to make so far in the preseason. And just want to see him be able to complete those passes when it comes on Sunday. And then just also the protection been suspect a little bit in preseason, and look for now that they have Cam Robinson, Andrew Norwell, Brandon Linder, AJ Cann, Jawan Taylor. Look for them to try to be able to protect the quarterback. Look for them to be able to try not to give up any sacks. And we'll see how that goes. And then defensively, got to be able to sack the quarterback. I think they'll be good at stopping the run, and then maybe pass coverage will be good. But I think the Texans, they've got Tyrod Taylor starting this game. Deshaun Watson going to be MIA until they figure out his situation. They just traded the Texans. Just traded starting cornerback Brandon Roby, Brady Roby to the Packers or to the Saints, I think, and that's demoralizing for the Texans. A lot of their teammates seem to be very confused about that move. So that's what I'm looking for, and then hopefully this first couple of weeks in the season, the Jags get wins. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, I'll be able to travel up to a couple of the games, see which ones I go to. Maybe I'll go to the first home game in a couple of weeks. I don't know yet. I have to figure out what my plans are. We'll have to see what happens there. And then I will bring up fantasy. I am in another league outside of the one that we're in, but this league thought it was going to be 12 teams, and at the last minute, someone else joined, and then we didn't have anybody else to join. So now we went from a 12-team league to now a 13-team league, and now it brings in the question of unevenness in the schedule. I actually start out with a bye, so I basically, or my opponent is on a bye, so I have no opponent. So now I have basically a free W to start the year, and then there are other teams in this league that are going to have basically be playing nobody twice. So I think they're going to get two free W's, and then there's going to be one person that has to play an opponent for every week of the year. So I don't really like that. I'm not sure how fair that is, because if one person's got to play everybody, and then it comes to playoff season or playoff seeding, you have other people who may have not had to actually win, and then they're going to be factored in as well. So I don't know how fair that is for playoff seeding, and not sure how much I like that. But also, apparently there was a trade in this league also that happened today, with somebody traded Aaron Rodgers for Jonathan Taylor, and this person gave Aaron Rodgers and another running back who is Melvin Gordon. So Melvin Gordon, who's no longer relevant, and Aaron Rodgers for Jonathan Taylor, which is really ridiculous in my mind. I don't know how that makes any sense. I saw that, and immediately I said collusion, and it has to be collusion, because that does not make any sense in my mind. And then, of course, in our league, you got Vic, aka CM Punk, is back, wanting to give Jameis Winston for David Montgomery. I ignored the trade. I didn't even decline it, left him hanging there. I don't know how Jameis Winston's going to do, but I like David Montgomery, so I'm going to keep him there. And then he tried to propose another trade, and I've left that one unread as well. So don't answer. CM Punk is back. He's just trying to make a lot of moves. I don't know how wise they are, but I don't know. I'll have to see. I haven't made any trades yet, but I don't know. Maybe we'll have to work out something for James Robinson or something like that. We'll have to see.
Yeah, that's one thing that, in the build up towards our season here in Fall Brawl, I think I made more trades in a few days span than I've ever made in the 10, 15, however many years I've been running. I've been running this league since what 2007, 8, whatever, something like that. So it's been a while, 13, 14 years. Um, Having to make trades there. I'm in a sleeper, a league on Sleeper app, which is a 12 team keeper league. That's just deep, and a lot of people are committed and understand fantasy and understand football, so it's going to be very tough. Uh, the other league that I'm in Yahoo, I won last year. Second time I've won that league. It was a while. I have the video here. I'm pointing at my trophy. I even wrote my team name over here on the part of the pedestal here. Because before, when I won this league, well before, the guy was actually making trophies and I got sent one. So I have that behind me on my background here in Zoom land. Trying to win Fall Brawl to go and edit my placard on my belt that I bought. Since Vic emphasizes the fact that he's come back because he wants to win the belt, but he isn't going to, because I'm not going to allow him to. I think Josh is probably going to go and come through and do it, but he almost did last year. So, um, um, you know the we'll see what happens this week. Niners play Detroit. Jared Goff. It's Jared Goff. They don't really have a number one wide receiver. TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, their two best offensive players, are both dealing with injuries. So that's going to be something to see. I don't see how the offensive line of the Detroit Lions is going to be able to hold up against a generally healthy defensive front four. That includes both Nick Bosa and D Ford. They're going to be on pitch counts, of course, so we'll see what happens with that. Kinlaw in his second year looks like he's making progress. Guy's a beast. I still wish we had DeForest Buckner, but Kinlaw's pretty good, and there's a lot of depth there. They're like three deep, basically, in that spot. You have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, which is one of the best linebacker duos in the whole entire league. The front seven is really where this is dictated. D'Amico Ryan's a new defensive coordinator, former Houston Texan, is going to be continuing the kind of defensive play calling that Bob Saleh had. Now Bob Saleh, of course, is the Jets head coach. Mike LaFleur also went to the Jets to be the offensive coordinator. But in regards to the secondary, of course, is still an issue, but we will see. Jared Goff is not really known for being a big. He has a deep ball, but who is he going to throw the deep ball to? He's probably going to be short and intermediate routes here in week one, but who knows? But that, in the offensive side, Jimmy G will be starting. Trey Lance, we don't know how much he's going to play. He had a little finger dislocation. So we'll see what Trey Lance and Trey Area and the whole bit will go on. Probably figure he'll come in for a couple of series of plays. Basically, it'll work out to be around a couple of series and kind of run the offense to keep Detroit on their heels. The running back core is deep. Mostert, one of the fastest guys in the league. Sermon, the rookie, bringing in a little bit of added juice. Their wide receiver core, Debo's as healthy as he's been since he's been in the league, basically. And you have Brandon Ayuk, who's a possession machine, receiving machine. GK is healthy for once, which is a novel concept. The offensive line is a question after Trent Williams and Alex Mack, who are the two veteran pillars there. Outside of that, McGlinchey has been a turnstile for a couple of years at the right tackle spot. He's going to have to correct that, or else he's going to get Jimmy Garoppolo killed. And the guard position has been an issue for a while under Shanny and Lynch. So we'll see how that goes with the running game. think is going to dominate. I figure they have a seven. They're I think a 7.5 point favorite. I think they're going to win on Sunday. It's an early game, but it's week one, so it's not as big of a deal. I think they're going to go get that win. It might be closer than people would think because it's week one, but Detroit just doesn't have enough really to battle against the Niners. Honestly, it's going to be much tougher once we get into the divisional playing the teams in the division and other teams within the NFC and even the AFC because the AFC has um, got a lot of good teams too. I have a hard time picking who's going to be there in the Super Bowl this coming year. I mean, a lot of people are going to pick Kansas City, but I have a hard time figuring out who is going to be on the NFC side. And you could say it's a homer pick. It wouldn't. The point is, 2 years ago, the Niners stayed healthy most of the year, and they were 7, 8 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl. After finishing last in the division, they finished last in the division last year. And if they can do the same thing in a 17-game season, possibly get the number one seed again, who knows what could happen? Can they get the home field advantage and play through Santa Clara and then just have a short trip over to LA? Wouldn't suck, but we'll see what happens with that. It's early days. Not really sure what's going to happen. There's a lot of moving parts in this NFL season. We'll get into all that. We'll talk about fantasy football as well next week, and we'll keep you all posted in regards to our leagues and what we're doing, some of the things we're thinking. Maybe, well, I don't know if some of the things we're thinking, because then that'll mean that some of the guys in our league will actually listen to the podcast, which would be good. But then they'll be taking the info that we're giving them on there and utilizing that against us. I wouldn't probably want to do that. Josh, let us know what you've been doing on iRacing and on the sim side, and where we can find you on once you're done with that, where we can find you on the socials so we can follow you and everything.
Yeah, I mean, as always, this week on the sim segment, or well, I mean, this past weekend, did a little bit of racing with the IndyCar at Pocono. Kept it mostly clean. There was one racer got caught up in a wreck. Not my fault, just couldn't avoid it. But used the high line for the most part, and was able to use the draft on the front stretch and the Long Pond Straight, and in the first turn, kind of use that high line, get out of the dirty air, and in turn 3 as well. And then sometimes defending, you had to use the high line in turn 2, which is similar to Indianapolis. But that was a fun track. Never raced at Pocono on the IndyCar. Never raced at the repave Pocono. I mean, in this game, raced the old version with before the repave in iRacing, but not the new one. So that was mostly what I did outside of Labor Day activities and weekend spending time with friends and family. But in other news, in iRacing, apparently they are implementing multiplayer AI. So I guess now you can. I mean, they already had AI on some series, but I guess now you can have other people. So like, say you and me race against each other against the AI. So similar to the console games where split screen multiplayer, and you're racing with a bunch of AI cars. So that might be interesting. Certainly a nice feature that they are rolling out here. And then we talked about it offline for this, but talk about the supercars racing with some of the sim celebrities, I guess, on iRacing. You've got some racing on the V8 supercars at Road America, and then there's some other stuff with racing Gen 7 NASCAR at Daytona. Seems to make sense. Gen 7 car looks a lot like and seems to be going the direction of V8 supercar. Haven't really had a chance to really watch that. I just saw brief clips on YouTube, but it gives exposure to the V8 supercars to American sim racing fan base. Although a lot of them probably know them, but a lot of fans that don't already know supercars will get a chance to watch the series, watch the drivers race on iRacing. So that definitely should be interesting. And then as always, you can follow the Twitch stream when I have it on, which I'll let you all know when I have it on. Probably have to do some upgrades as far as streaming quality. Got to do some testing, I guess, and probably upgrade it from 720 to 1080p, so it's a little bit more clear, like other people's streams. I was just trying to do that to save performance, but I'll see what I can do there. But as always, follow Twitch at Twitch TV /usailor2, and then on the social media, I'm really just active on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter at JP Huffine. We talk about Jags, talk about NASCAR, talk about Formula One, talk about even college football or any other stuff. Got UF playing USF this weekend, and FSU played Notre Dame. Talked about Mackenzie Milton making his comeback from his injury a few years ago at UCF and having a chance to almost bring back FSU into the win there against Notre Dame, which would have been a shocker there. So a lot of interesting stuff there to talk about on socials.
And definitely we'll follow you in regards to your Twitch streams and your sim racing because you're really damn good at it. Hopefully one day I'll be able to get on that if I can actually get a couple bucks to go and do that. It'd probably be really bad, but it's fine. There are drivers that are bad, and some of them actually drive regular cars for a living. For me, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew. You can follow us at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. You can find the Grip Strip podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn. You can find it on philipgmatthew.com, our old blog site. You can find it there. We are at 77 episodes, so this is episode 77. So it's pretty good for where we started. Keep on going with this. We're growing. I'll keep on talking about motorsport, talking about football, talking about whatever's on our minds. I would be remiss before we go in regards to 20 years since 9/11, for all the people that were lost, not only the people that were lost that day in the Twin Towers of Pentagon, but also the people that perished in the planes and also all the servicemen and women that perished in war because of what happened that day in 2001. We give our prayers and we acknowledge you at this time 20 years ago. The selflessness, the sacrifices made, and also some of the other things that had to happen, unfortunately, because of the just sheer the horrendous situation we were in that allowed this to happen. We will be back next week for episode 78 of the Grip Strip podcast, going over Richmond, going over the Italian Grand Prix, going over the Portland IndyCar race, and previewing Cup at Bristol, IndyCar at Laguna. We'll review IMSA at Laguna. We'll review MotoGP and F2, whatever, Xfinity, whatever else is going on. We go over week 1 of the NFL season and fantasy and let you know about what's going on week 2 for all of us. For Josh, I'm Phil. Thank you for listening to Grip Strip Podcast, and we will see you next week. Take care of one another. God bless. Goodbye.